All right, now's the time to grab your shofars and we're going to sing the Shema with Joshua Aaron. Here we go.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
All right. Now we are going to recite the rest, and so come along with me and recite it. Here we go. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, Jehovah is one. Praise be the name of his glorious sovereignty forever and ever. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. And you shall teach them thoroughly to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be for a reminder between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and upon your gates. And I like to think of us on this path of life, and the Torah are these guardrails that keep us walking on the narrow path. Deuteronomy 30 verse 11 says it's not that hard to keep, and 1 John 5:3 says it's not too heavy for you. If you are new on the recording or new just joining us for the first time today and want to know what our reading group is all about, we just simply want to have a conversation today. We're just regular folks who found ourselves on this path that doesn't really have a label. You can call us Torah Aware or followers of the way, but more importantly, we believe wholeheartedly returning and learning the ways of our Creator. We believe that Israel is a people group defined by a relationship with God. This does not mean you study to retain knowledge only. It means to study and walk it out with faith and action in our everyday lives. Teshma is a Hebrew word for hear and do. This is not a walk of perfection, but rather a walk of wholeheartedness. We strive to stand in alignment with our Creator to overcome the trials that we face in our everyday lives. We believe that the Torah is an eternal lifestyle. It doesn't disappear in the kingdom coming. The Messiah continued to demonstrate to us an example of how to walk it out. Obedience to the Torah, our instructions for life, is wisdom and knowledge. It determines our place as God's people for the future. The question is, how do we apply the truth of Torah to our lives now? We seek out the entire context of how each passage fits into the whole Bible picture. We attempt to place ourselves into the story. We want to love what God loves and hate what he hates. We cannot read a Hebrew book with Greek glasses. The New Testament cannot be a foundational book. It must back God up because God does not change. So if there's any apparent contradictions anywhere in the Bible, then there's an issue with our understanding or a mistranslation somewhere. We operate from the assumption that the whole Bible is the truth. Once new understandings are revealed to us, then the obligation is with us as individuals to act. This journey is a process, not to know it all. If you are just starting out on your journey, please know that Jehovah has set apart appointments with us, found in Leviticus 23, called the weekly Sabbath, whereby we work 6 days and rest on the seventh day. The other set apart times are the 7 yearly feasts, and we also acknowledge the monthly Sabbaths. We do not claim to have all the answers here, but we do know that the foundation is the Torah. Understanding scripture requires approaching it on its own terms, so we must be willing to be corrected and meet others with humility. Let us search the scripture together. We respectfully ask you place your ego aside to study with us today. Our hope is that you walk away with more understanding each week. Proverbs 3:12 says, "For whom Jehovah loves, he corrects." So, Father, help me heed your correction and strive to make my ways match your ways. It's pretty lengthy. Eric helped me kind of revamp that a little bit. But if you have any tweaks to that kind of mission statement, I'm totally open to hearing it. And again, this is a process. So I'm just striving to have better language as we describe what we're doing. So if you hear us refer or hear me refer to the Blue Bible today, it's just simply a version of the Bible I like to read from because it has a quick access to the Hebrew on the right and the English is on the left, and it also has the Strong's numbers above it. So that's the only, but the reason why I refer to this Bible. However, whatever version of the English Bible you read from today, it's all good. There are some larger prints available. Hebrew reads from right to left, starting with the Aleph, ending with the Tav, and Hebrew is a picture language. Ever heard of a picture is worth 1,000 words? Well, you can derive a lot more meaning if you break these Hebrew words down into their letters, and it gives us a little bit more of the picture or understanding. Couple of reminders that you're more than welcome to invite new people to join our Zoom. Just teach them about the mute button and the camera and all of that, just so it saves time in the beginning. And just please be respectful with interruptions and comments. I love interruptions. I love it when you have a thought. This platform is meant to be interactive. I am not your teacher, your rabbi, whatever. No. I just simply facilitate a conversation. So this platform here is meant to be a discussion. So feel free to interrupt. Just be respectful when doing so, as well as we want to have dialogue, not monologue. So make sure that we are including everybody. And if there's 4 people that have their hand up, that we don't hog the microphone. Okay. Today is the 22nd of November on our pagan calendar, but God has a different calendar. So we are now in the 9th month, the 2nd day of the 9th month on the Hebrew calendar. And means we have 3 weeks till Hanukkah in December 14th to the 21st. We are in the month of Kislev, so month 9. That occurred this week on the new moon. And I know there's different calendars in this movement, and we're not here to debate that. And then also, I want to have just a little bit of discussion before we dive into our Torah portion today on deception. And so with that, I just have one slide here. Every time we change a new month, I'll just present a kind of synopsis of this month, because we have 12 constellations in the sky. This is not to be confused with horoscopes and astrology. Astronomy and astrology are 2 different things. God invented the constellations. He made the stars. And so don't want to, this is not a horoscope type of thing. But in the 9th month of Kislev, we find some interesting things that happen in the Bible. They are also associated with different tribes of Israel. So the tribe for the 9th month is associated with the last born son of Jacob, Benjamin. So this is the tribe associated with Benjamin. The symbol for the tribe of Benjamin and what Benjamin would wave on their flag is the wolf. And it's associated with the constellation Sagittarius, but in Hebrew it's Kaset. It means the archer. And the stone associated with this month is the amethyst. And I just list a few interesting things that happened this month from the Bible. 3 Hebrew children are thrown into the fiery furnace in Babylon. King Yehoiakim throws the word into the fire in Jerusalem. The word of the Lord comes to Zechariah in Zechariah 7:1 in this month. The word of the Lord comes to Haggai in this month. The foundation of the second temple was completed. Judah and Benjamin told no foreign wives in Ezra 10 verses 9 to 13. All 11 of the 12 tribes were born in modern day Iraq. Did you know that? Except for this guy, except for Benjamin. Benjamin was born in Israel. Isn't that interesting? Hanukkah is celebrated in this month, and the flood rain stopped in the middle of Hanukkah. That's on the 28th, the mid of Kislev. And so there's some legends and stuff out there that this month is associated with hope. The Messiah is also, my belief is that the Messiah was conceived in the middle of Hanukkah. And I have some good teachings on that, on how you can calculate the birth of Messiah by knowing, calculating the birth of John the Baptist, because we know that there was a 6-month difference between Elizabeth and Mary. And if we know when the priestly service was that John the Baptist's dad was doing in the temple, you can reverse engineer that and calculate when Yeshua was born. So there's some really interesting teachings out there about that. So that's all I wanted to say about Kislev, but now I want to go on. Is there any questions with that before we go on to a quick discussion about deception? Okay, so I want to ask a few kind of rhetorical questions here, and there's something to think about during our Torah portion today, because we see a big deception happening. So here I've got a couple of questions for the group. Is it okay to lie or deceive, tell a little white lie, I'm being facetious, is it okay? Is deceiving okay when preserving someone's dignity? Is it okay to deceive to promote peace? Is it okay to deceive for the greater good, to protect a loved one? Question. These are some questions to think about, and you'll get to see what what I'm getting at here. Have a look at these two images on the screen. And what do you see? Right? It's not always what we think. So, like in the case of the apple, it looks like it's good to eat, but if you keep eating that apple, it's rotten on the other side. Right? And you often hear of a wolf in sheep's clothing. The Bible refers to this kind of deception as well. But then the other way to look at it is, what if what if the sheep are going off a cliff and you hide the wolf in a sheep's clothing to go the opposite direction? There's two it's an interesting perspective, right? What does the Bible say about deceit? And it's very interesting when you compile. I did a study where I compiled all the verses on deception from the Old Testament and the New Testament, and some pretty striking things come out. We know it says the heart is deceitful above all things. And so I stole this image from Google, right? There's a heart initially. When you look at that, just initially you see a nice heart, but it's like, there's some things that can come at you that maybe aren't quite what you think. I know that we can relate in this movement of some of the steps we've said. So here's some of my favorite ones that I just did a quick snapshot of what the Bible says about deceit. In our Torah portion today, we're going to read in Genesis 27:12, where Jacob deceives his father Isaac. And he says to his mom, Rebecca, he says, perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall be like a deceiver in his eyes, and I shall bring a curse on me and not a blessing. This is when Jacob steals the blessing, right? And he deceives his father into giving him the blessing. Interesting. And then in Genesis 27:35, Isaac says to Esau, he's like, your brother Jacob came and with deceit and took your blessing. We find out later on in Genesis 29:25, Jacob was deceived by Laban when he gives Leah instead of Rachel for a bride. And he says to Laban, why did you trick me? Why did you deceive me? And then in Deuteronomy 11:16, we heed some warnings. Take care lest your heart be deceived and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. Leviticus 19:11 says, do not deal falsely. Exodus 20:12 says, do not bear false witness. Proverbs 12:22 says, lying lips are an abomination. That's interesting, because how do we reconcile this story we're about to read from today? Psalms 101 verse 7 says, no one who practices deceit should dwell in my house. No one who utters lies shall continue before my eyes. That's a pretty strong warning. And then, of course, the one I quoted, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? The New Testament has some really interesting verses on deceit, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with a lot of them. Here's some highlights. Ephesians 4:14, so that we may no longer be children tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness in deceitful schemes. Or how about Matthew 24:4? Yeshua was speaking, saying, see that no one leads you astray. See that no one deceives you. For many are going to come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and they will cause many to err. 1 John 1:8 says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. Oh, so we can deceive ourselves. Huh, it's interesting. Colossians 2:8, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Messiah. So I have some questions about this Torah portion. This is an interesting one because we see a big deception going on and a pretty big deal. Um, I, was thinking about that this week as well. Um, Thinking about what are some of the deceptions that I was taught. I was taught Yeshua was born on December 25th. I was taught the law was abolished. The law doesn't apply to me anymore. I was taught that celebrating Easter, Halloween, Christmas was okay. Um, where's the list of do's and don'ts of how we are to conduct ourselves and not be deceived? Have we ever been deceived by our government, our leaders, our doctors, our pandemics? Not to get onto that whole tangent, but pharmaceutical companies, our family. Has our family ever deceived us? Our friends, our workplace, our church, our spouse? Can you teach how not to be deceived? And how important is it to learn and teach ourselves how to not be deceived? There's a huge warning. We know that Jacob in our Torah portion today goes on to become Israel, and there's this symbolism of Jacob and Israel. Can we be led astray? How do we not be led astray? We know our hearts can lead us astray. We know other people can lead us astray, but we also know that God can use any situation, even the deceitful kind, to bring about his plan and his purpose. So how does this fit? So these are my questions. This whole study of deceit, the Bible actually has a lot to say about it. I have a few pages of verses on it, and that's interesting to me. So I don't know, does anyone have any thoughts on that? Had you ever thought about it before? Do you have any sort of thoughts on deception? Opening it up
It,
to you.
it's interesting you bring this about because I've read today's chapters ahead of time just to because I had a bit of time today, and that's the one thing that stood out to me. What was all this going on about this deception? Why would Rebecca ask Jacob to deceive his father and get the blessing? And why was that all right? So I've
Yeah,
got questions. I don't have answers, I'm afraid. But
good.
you posed a question: is it ever all right to deceive somebody? And my natural inclination is to say no. We're told not to bear false witness. Um, but you've also raised an interesting point that we should be careful not to be deceived. And so it's a two-pronged. So I like the discussion, but I'm not sure I've got any answers to add. I'm just interested to see what the discussions will bring.
I like your comment, Alex, and you're right. I'm going to go over to Chrissy here, but just a quick comment is it my responsibility to teach this group on not being deceived? No. Or where's that part of personal responsibility to teach you have to filter what I say to you. And I'm using myself as an example. I'm not saying I'm not a teacher, but it's like I'm just like thinking about this. If I was to sit in a class with you, Alex, could is it my responsibility or your responsibility to either teach me to not be deceived or for me to have my filter up, my screen, and not be deceived? Do you know what I'm asking?
So let's look at the world today, because there are so many deceptions from the government, from people in power. And so surely it's our responsibility to be discerning and to weigh things, whether they're truthful or deceptive. So I think there is a personal responsibility in all of this.
But there is also the Bible says that they will cause many to err. So teachers, are held to a higher standard. I understand now why the Bible speaks about how teachers are held to a higher standard when they teach, because if you teach deception, whose responsibility is that? You, if you claim to be a teacher and you teach deception, right? What does
But
the Bible say about that?
But also look at Revelations. Doesn't it say that even the elect will be deceived?
That
So
it
we have to
says
be very careful.
it says the deception will be so great as to deceive, as to lead away. So it's not saying they will be deceived. It's saying the deception is so great that it's so great as to, it may lead others to be
Does it
deceived.
say may or will? I thought it said will be.
Yeah, we can look at, let's go to Chrissy. Let's go to Chrissy.
Sorry. Yeah.
Um, I know I'm so glad that we're touching on this because this is one of the things that has really, I've pondered a lot in parenthood because how many times do you drive by the park and your toddler's like, I want to go, I want to go. And you're like, no, it's closed. Like, it's not open today. And, because you're in a rush or whatever. And it's like, every time I think that way, I'm like, oh man, like maybe we should be like more careful with how we even talk to our children because as parents, we are their teachers as far as I'm concerned. We are the ones leading them in a direction. And so lately I've thought about Jehovah and how he's never, like, from what I can see, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where he has deceived anybody, where when he has spoken that there has been deception anywhere. And I wonder if that's why it's so crucial that your yes be yes and your no be no, because it doesn't leave room to add or take away anything other than what you're meaning, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, like, I love when we talk about bringing this, we're bringing the Bible into our lives today. Like, how do we apply the Torah to our lives today? And that's kind of been one of the ones that's been burning in my heart lately, is just that, okay, well, today's world, I'm a parent. So how do I apply that to my life today? And so now it's like, I've changed it so that, I mean, I still screw up sometimes and accidentally default to the park's closed, but now more often than not, it's just, no, we don't have time today, maybe next time, or like trying to reword it so that it's still the truth, because I mean, I'm going to wrap this up. Like, a lot of things that your kids overhear, that's too big for them to understand or know. And so it's not like you're just going to go and tell your child every single thing going on in your adult life, because that's not healthy.
Right.
So there's got to be a balance somehow where it's just like, you know what? It's just not your business. I'm sorry. One day you'll understand, or one day you'll grow up and have a family and maybe face the situation, or have this conversation with your spouse one day, but like, it's too big for you. And that's kind of where we've started to say that instead of making up stories or anything like that. So anyways, I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is something that has been on my mind a lot lately. So
Yeah, thank you for that, Chrissy. And yeah, it's very different than we're talking about protecting your kids from too much information for that. That's, as opposed to like everybody thinks they're right. Every religious group, every church, every platform thinks they're right. And they think everybody else is deceived. And everybody has the truth. And yet there's so many controversial groups out there. And especially now more than ever, how do we discern and not be deceived? Because the deceptions, in my opinion, are compounding. Like, it used to be quite simple. And now there's deception upon deception. And there's so many different sects and different religious groups, and everybody thinks that they're right. So where do you start when you try to discern truth? And there has to be a starting point, and there has to be a source of truth. So it's going to be that's a whole other conversation. But let's see what we can learn from our Torah portion today. So we have a big deception in our Torah portion today. Today's Torah portion is Toldot. And we're going to start in Genesis, halfway through Genesis 25. We're actually just going to start in verse 19 of Genesis chapter 25. And what Toldot means is generations. And yes, it means the generations as you and I would think about with generations for sure. But it's also the family stories. So here up until now, Abraham has died. We've heard about all of these. We've heard kind of the creation of the world, and the world's gone through some traumas, some flooding, some Tower of Babel, and now we're focusing in on a particular family, and we're focusing on a particular bloodline. And we're going to hear some family stories of Abraham's son, Isaac, and Isaac has twin boys in this portion. So these are some family stories. And what are we to learn from this? What are we to glean from this? So these are the generations of Isaac. These are the family stories of Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. And what do we know about the 40? We've seen it over and over again that 40 is a time of a trial of testing and choices. And we see that over and over in the Torah and in the New Testament with Yeshua. 40 years in the wilderness, we see that pattern. So that's interesting. And Isaac is 60 when the twins are born, Jacob and Esau. Rebekah is barren. We see a lot of women struggle with infertility, and then they have a miraculous conception. So Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mom, is barren, and she miraculously conceives these twins, Jacob and Esau. And she's told that 2 nations are in your womb. Esau sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of red lentil soup. And we know that this is where, reading the Torah will take you only so far. You have to understand the cultural significance of this to get the context of the story. So who can tell me why Jacob is cooking red lentil soup, right? Because it's a mourner's meal. So they're mourning. Jacob is cooking this specific meal because it's a mourner's meal. And understanding Hebrew culture is they do this to this day. And I have a little excerpt from that's what you cook when someone is grieving and they're mourning the loss of a family member. So who are they grieving? So this tells you a little bit more context into the story. So let's read. Let's start by reading. And I want to point out there's 2 misspelled words as well in Hebrew. So I want to talk about that. But let me I'll start in Genesis chapter 25, verse 19. And then I'm just going to stop because I just want to show you that Hebrew word and why it's misspelled. And these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham fathered Isaac. And Isaac was the son of 40 years when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Padam Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to him for a wife. Okay, so let's just stop there for 1 second. So what we see here in that word for generations, these are the generations of Isaac. That word generations is Toldot, which is the name of our Torah portion, and it's misspelled. It's missing a vav. It's missing a vav. So you can see it right here, whereas in Ruth 4:18 it has that vav in there. So let's rewind the clock. The first time we see the word Toldot or generations is in Genesis chapter 2 verse 4. When it says, these are the generations of the heaven and the earth when they were created in the day that Yahovah God, that's the first time we see this Toldot. And there you see it highlighted in orange. It has the Vav. But then the next time we see it is in Genesis 5 verse 1, when it talks about the book of the generations of Adam, but it's missing the Vav. And then in our Torah portion just now, in 2019, it's also missing the Vav. And it's missing the Vav in Genesis 6:9. And down here, I've just listed all the verses in Exodus and Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. It's all spelt with this missing second last Vav. It's all spelt like that until we get to the book of Ruth. And who can tell me what happens in the book of Ruth that's significant? What happens? What happens in the book of Ruth? Why do we have that book in our Bible? It says, these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez is the son that Ruth has. She has twins, or not twins, but Pharez begat Hezron. It's spelt correctly again. The longer spelling in Hebrew is the correct spelling. So the Bible has some misspelled words on purpose, and it's because it wants to point to something. Well, what happened in the book of Ruth is Ruth was a Moabite, and she was grafted into Israel. That whole story is about being grafted in. And so the Bible wants to highlight that. And a Vav in Hebrew is connection. It's a nail, and a nail connects. So it wants you to connect that there's grafting in going on. Some sort, and you can maybe, it's a little hint. It's a little hint. Okay. So, okay, let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. Why don't we finish? Here we go. So then, verse 21, and Isaac prayed to Yahovah for his wife, for she was barren. And Yahovah was entreated for him, or moved. That's the Hebrew word. He was moved by his prayer. And his wife Rebekah conceived, and the sons struggled together within her. And she said, if this is right, why am I this way? And she went to ask Yahovah, and Yahovah said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. Yea, 2 people shall break from your body, and one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And her days were fulfilled to bear, and behold, twins were in her womb. And the first came out, all of him red like a hairy robe, and they called his name Esau. And afterwards his brother came out, and his hand was holding onto the heel of Esau. And his name was called Yaakov, or Jacob. And Isaac was the son of 60 years when she bore them. And the boys grew up, and Esau became a man knowing hunting, a man of the field. And Jacob was a simple man living in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth. And Rebekah loved Jacob, and Jacob boiled soup. And Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, please let me eat of this red soup, for I am faint on account of his name. I am faint. On account of this, his name is called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me your birthright today. And Esau said, behold, I am going to die. What good is this? A birthright to me. And Jacob said, swear to me today. And he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave bread and soup of lentils to Esau, and he ate and drank and rose up and left. And Esau despised the birthright. Okay, so that brings us to the end of chapter 25. Any comments on that?
So I was puzzled when I read this earlier, thinking, why would anyone relinquish their birthright for a bowl of soup?
Very good.
So I kind of figure there's
You don't remember?
There's a deeper understanding that I'm not yet privy to.
You don't remember from last year? You don't remember from last year, Alex? No? Okay. Before we get to that, I just want to point out another misspelled word in Hebrew. And it again, I say this to say, like, this is not an isolated incident. Isaac and Rebekah have twins. You read that in Genesis 25, verse 24. You can see underlined here is the Hebrew word for twins, tomim. And that is the same Strong's number when Judah has a baby with Tamar. And Tamar also has twins. So let me get this straight. Isaac and Rebekah have twins, And we're going to read later on in Genesis 38 that Judah and Tamar have twins. And that's twins in the Hebrew is the same Strong's number as when Isaac and Rebekah have twins, but we're missing letters. And remember I said the longer spelling in Hebrew is the correct one. So you have an aleph that's added and a va and a yud, a little yud that's added. And again, it's misspelled. And I'm not going to talk about the why of that until we get to Genesis 38, but there's a whole reason why that is. Okay? Because I want to just stay focused, but I'm saying here's another example how a word is misspelled because it wants you to connect these stories of these twins. It wants you to connect them, make the connection. But let's review where we are in the story, okay? Because when I came into Torah, when I first woke up to this, I never connected these stories. Believe it or not, I was that dumb. I did not realize that these were all the generations. Like I just read the Jacob story in isolation of the Isaac story, and I didn't really connect the dots that these are all related. And so that's why I've put this slide up, because we have to remember where we are. So Abraham and Sarah, they have Isaac. Isaac marries Rebekah, his true love, the first monogamous relationship we see. They take no other lovers. They are in love. They have a love story, and they have twins, Jacob and Esau. This is where we're at. But we know that Jacob marries 4 wives. He marries Leah, and Leah and Rachel are twins. They're identical twins. That's how Laban deceived Jacob. And Jacob goes on to have 6 kids with Leah, 2 kids with Rachel, and 4 kids with Bilhah and Zilpah, which is crazy. It's crazy. Because he burst the 12 tribes of Israel. And Judah and Tamar, this is that story of the twins, Pharez and Zerah. There's 10 generations from this twin to King David. And then ultimately, the line of King David has Messiah. And that is why we're studying this, because there's something to learn about these Toldot, these generations, these family stories. So there's 10 generations I mentioned from Pharez to David. And it lists these in Matthew chapter 1 as well, to all the way to David. And what happens in Ruth is we have a foreigner introduced in the story. Ruth is from the Moabites, and she marries Boaz in the book of Ruth. And Boaz, they have Obed, Jesse, David. David is the King David. The Messiah is prophesied to come from King David. So we have lineage, generational proof of this story. So that, to me, when I connected that, made a lot more sense. As well as, I want to show you why I highlighted Judah and Benjamin in yellow. Judah is from Leah's mom, Leah's his mom. They're all birthed by Jacob. And Benjamin was birthed by Rachel. Those 2 characters make up the southern kingdom of Israel from the 12 tribes. The 10 lost tribes in the north are the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Judah is Judah and Benjamin. So they're the southern kingdom. And this helps frame the history, the zoom your lens out to know why we're studying this and how this fits. And I never understood this before in Christianity until I came into Torah and started reading it like this. And so that's why I kind of made that slide. You, Annie?
Yeah. Ruth is not the first foreigner. Actually, Boaz's mother was from the city that the walls. She was the harlot that lowered the spies. Rahab, yes. And so it's important that right there you have 2 foreigners introduced into the line. I just wanted to make that. But also one other point, I may not have this right, but at the birth, Jacob, his hand came out and they put the red thing around his wrist. And then his brother pulled him back. And so he was actually going to be the firstborn and receive everything. But because they were fighting continually in the womb, and his brother pulled him back and then jumped out first through the crack, so to speak, as it says, um, this it seems unfair that Jacob got it, but the mother remembered that, and so it got the way it was supposed to be in the beginning. But my 2 points I wanted to bring up.
Thanks, you, Annie. I think you're thinking of Judah and Tamar when they had the twins. They talks about the crimson cord, but you are right.
Oh,
They
okay,
did.
yeah,
But you
yeah.
are right. For if they were having twins, they would tie a cord, a red cord around one of the twins's, um, so that they could mark which one was the firstborn. So you are correct on that.
Mm.
Okay, I want to go over a few things here. So the first sentence of our Torah portion, we talked about generations Toldot, but I also want to talk about this word begot. So these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Something cool about this word, begot, there was some rumors because remember Sarah was hidden from Abimelech. He was told that, you're my sister sort of thing, but they couldn't mistake that Isaac, it says this in the Hebrew, Isaac and Abraham were a dead ringer for each other. It's that Hebrew word duma. And it's a lookalike. They were a lookalike. And so I'm not a big Tom Hanks fan, but I put in the bottom corner here, you can see this is Tom Hanks's son, and you can see there's no question who the dad is, right? They look identical. You can really see the father-son resemblance. Well, that's that Hebrew word. It says in our English, Abraham begot Isaac. And yes, it means Abraham begot. But Duma is a lookalike. And how we see that is it's he begot and lookalike Duma have the exact gramatra. And so there's a connection there. They were a dead ringer for each other, if that makes sense. I kind of like that. And there's this verse in Hebrews 1:3 that says, the son is the radiance of the father's glory and the exact representation of his nature. And so you can learn something about that. Okay. Now I don't want to talk. There is a teaching out there, and I can put it out to the group. It was an interesting study learning the nature of Esau versus the nature of Jacob. And we have some hints in this portion here where it said Esau was a man knowing hunting, a man of the field, but Jacob was a simple man living in tents. And we read that and we're like, okay, that's interesting. But we do have some hints that Esau was kind of selfish. He was cunning. Jacob was more humble, which to me makes no sense at all because Jacob is the one doing the deceiving here, right? So I have some questions. Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea. Rebekah, his wife, conceived, but the children struggled together within her. And she says, if all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And so what we're seeing here is this 2 choices, these 2 nations, this dual nature here. It is said in tradition and legend, and I don't have the source for this, that whenever Rebecca would pass by the yeshiva of Melchizedek, that Jacob would leap within her, and whenever she would pass by these places of idol worship, Esau would leap within her. And Rebecca asks in the Torah here this question of, where did I see this verse here? She's like, what's happening? Because like there was no ultrasounds in those days, right? How did she know that she was carrying twins? She's never been pregnant before, right? She was barren. She didn't know what a single pregnancy felt like. And here she had twins. So there is something in the text to suggest there was this struggle within her. And how could she figure out that there were twins, going in? And that was a teaching I'd heard, which is interesting. And again, filter the information. I'm saying there's teachings out there I'm just saying, be a filter. But what we see some more evidence of Esau. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was wholesome man, dwelling in tents. And what we see that if you are a hunter, sorry, I just got to mute. If you're a hunter, in order to trap an animal, you have to have an element of deceit, do you not? You have to either sneak up on that animal, so you're being sneaky. You have to set a trap. So literally what this Hebrew is saying about Esau is he understood hunting. He understood how to entrap. He understood how to deceive his father with his mouth. And his father believed him to be very punctilious in observing the divine ordinances. There was entrapment in his mouth. We see there's this Hebrew word for a cunning hunter, right? Yada is to know. To know trapping is what that says with a direct translation in the Hebrew. He knew how to entrap. And you have to. I'm not saying that this is wrong or right. I'm like, it's interesting. It shows the different nature of Esau. So another really interesting clue is it always perplexed me how the favoritism could be going on here, because we know that Rebecca favored Jacob and Isaac favored Isaac. Or sorry, I've got that backwards. Rebecca favored Jacob. Isaac favored Esau. Why? That just perplexed me. Part of the study of the generations, when you look at how Rebecca grew up, who is Rebecca's dad? How did Rebecca grow up? Rebecca grew up with Laban. Laban is her dad. What do we know about Laban later on in our story? Laban's daughters are Leah and Rachel. He's a wily character. So it is said that because Rebecca grew up around a wily kind of deceptive dad, she grew up knowing how to read people. She grew up being able to recognize deception, which is why she favored Jacob. Now compare and contrast that with Isaac. Isaac grew up with Abraham as a dad, a wholesome guy, a Torah observant, not perfect, but I mean, he was a good guy. So Isaac grew up around Abraham, and so there's a certain naivety that Isaac had. And you guys know this. In my job, I meet a lot of street people. I meet a lot of homeless people. Make no mistake, these people, these homeless people, these street people, they're very resourceful. I met a guy one time. I asked, like, how are you doing your laundry? And he was very resourceful and finding what store in town he could use the water for to wash his clothing, right? He had no money for a washing machine. You become very resourceful. You adapt to your surroundings. You adapt really well. And that's what we see in this story. Putting ourselves into the story, if you were Rebecca, you can recognize deception because you were around deception. And if you were Isaac, you know what I'm talking about. People that grow up without, in a white picket fence with all the luxuries and haven't really felt any suffering, you're kind of naive. And that gives us a little bit more insight. Does that make sense? Am I losing people? I got a head nod from Nicole. Okay. You're kind of trusting. Okay, thumbs up. Awesome. All right. So now, when we're talking about, I'm not sure I'm going to talk about this. This might be too much. There is a huge amount of debate on the book of Yasher and whether that's scripture and what we can kind of glean, that sort of thing. I will just put it out there. I'm not going to teach on it. I'm not going to speak about it. But there is a whole other story as to why Esau was hunting and why Esau says to Jacob at the end here, what good is my birthright anyways? I'm a dead man. There's a teaching out there, and it's found in the book of Yasher, chapter 27, that the reason that Esau was like that is because he had just killed Nimrod. Who is Nimrod? Nimrod was the king of the world. And if you had killed the king of the world, you would have his followers or his bodyguards after you. So there's a teaching that Esau thought, I'm a dead man anyway, so what good is my birthright? Might as well sell it to Jacob for a bowl of red lentil soup. So you can do your own research and have your own thoughts on that. I'm just letting you know that that is a teaching that's out there, and it does explain why Esau said, what good is my birthright anyway? Now, this is a little screenshot of a Jewish funeral guide. They do this to this day. It's a meal of condolence. This is a cultural thing. We as Westerners don't understand some of the cultural practices of different cultures. So this is the part where we have to know a bit of Hebrew culture. A mourner's meal. So the meal of condolence was, especially when people are in their grief, they prepare food is very cultural. And in my culture, food is big. Someone passes away, people are bringing food. But this specific meal of condolence, red lentils, if you can see at the bottom here, the famous red lentil stew that Jacob prepared was intended as a meal of condolence for his father Isaac. And some of this is found in the Talmud. The Talmud is not all bad. It's not scripture, it's commentary. So take it as a history book, but you can find some cultural understanding in the Talmud. But again, I am not advocating for the Talmud as scripture. I'm advocating for the Talmud to understand Jewish culture and history. That's it. So my question is, Jacob was making this red lentil stew. That begs the question, who died? Who died that Jacob was making this meal of condolence? It's a mourner's meal. Does anybody know who they're grieving? Thoughts?
Abraham.
Yeah, Mom. Woohoo! Abraham died, Grandpa Abraham. And there's also a teaching out there that says that that Shem possibly died around this time as well. I don't know. I'm just saying it's out there. And it also says that Esau despised his birthright. And that's always confused me. I don't really have an answer. I'm just finding that really precarious to say that he despised his birthright. Didn't make any sense to me. But it says that there right at the end of chapter 25. Jacob gave bread and soup of lentils to Esau. He ate and drank, rose up and left, and Esau despised the birthright. I don't have any, does anyone have any insight on that? Nicole?
I understand that to be like taking it too lightly. He didn't put enough onus on the birthright to protect it. Just like we're told to guard and keep the commandments. Yeah. And not to take his name in vain. Esau took his birthright in vain.
That's good insight. It's kind of like it's just like a bowl of red lentil soup comes and goes. And to sell your birthright just for a bowl, like it's like it means nothing to you. It's discarded like it means nothing. That's very interesting. You, Annie?
Yeah, along that line is he was not keeping the tradition of Abraham and Isaac, his father, and keeping himself in the commandments. He was being sneaky. He was being out and about and worldly. And so when he says, what does it matter to me? I'm a dead man, more than killing Nimrod, he wasn't living for the covenant. And so he was outside of it. That means spiritual death. We tend to think physical death. but he knew he was spiritually dead, and where his brother was not. So he was despising the birthright right of being in the lineage of Yeshua.
I'm glad you said that, Annie, because we're going to read later on more evidence to show the rebellion that Esau had, and it kind of speaks more to his nature. So to kind of prove what you're saying. So that's really good. One thing I wanted to share that I was so dumb about, I didn't realize that the birthright was different than the firstborn. The blessing is different than the firstborn birthright. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This makes more sense because I was confused. Why then did they deceive Jacob on a blessing? And then I'm like, okay, I have to understand that there's a difference between the firstborn birthright and the blessing. So the firstborn birthright is the recognition of the firstborn, because Esau came out first, right? He deserved the firstborn blessing. He was the firstborn twin. And so he was supposed to get the firstborn and given a double portion of the estate. The blessing is the land, is the inheritance, the lineage of inheritance of the land. I didn't really understand that before. So the firstborn birthright, it would be like if there was $75,000 in the estate, the firstborn would get 50,000 and the secondborn would get 25,000. So it's like there's a double portion given to the firstborn, and the secondborn got some, but it wasn't the double portion. And so that makes a lot more sense when in our future generational stories, our Toldot stories, when Jacob crosses his hands and gives the firstborn birthright to Ephraim instead of Manasseh. As we read, it was he gave the firstborn birthright. Is a big deal to give the birthright to the secondborn. So that always had confused me. Did I confuse people, or did that clear things up? You, Annie?
Yeah, it cleared it up. But the thing is, the right to the land, but also the firstborn is the king, the ruler of the family. And so it's like when Ephraim got it, he was pronounced the ruler, because when Joseph got it, it was because his oldest brother slept with the wife. Therefore, he lost the royal line, and it went to Joseph, and from Joseph to Ephraim. And so in this case, it went from to Jacob. And it's the royal line, not only the double portion, but the holder of the title of the land and the royal line. And it's interesting because when it was given, it said that Judah shall be holding the scepter or the royal line until Shiloh comes. And that means when Yeshua came and was crucified, it went back from Judah into Ephraim. But Ephraim, being a drunkard, it didn't come to him till he stood up in his righteousness. So that's a very important point of the royal line. But even though it was given to Ephraim for a time, it was given to Judah until Yeshua came, and then it was passed back to Ephraim. So it's interesting noting that it's nuance, but it's an important thing on the royal line of the family.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you could see Esau really didn't want that responsibility. So there's this verse in Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And you could see Esau, and maybe that's a bit more insight. Esau really didn't care. He didn't really care about that.
True.
So, yeah. So Alex, questions? Did that answer your question a little bit more, or do you have any other points before we go on to 26?
So I remember that Esau killed Nimrod. I didn't realize the chronological timing, that if he'd done that beforehand, he obviously thought that he wasn't going to be alive to inherit a birthright, so therefore didn't value it. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
About Esau killing Nimrod, this is news to me because in my studies, it was supposed to be Melchizedek that killed him.
Yeah,
But
no, it says in Yasher that Esau killed him and he was hunting. That Esau was hunting, that he ran across Nimrod and his men. He drew his arrow back, he killed him, and then fled. Went back to his father's house, met Jacob, got the bowl of red lentil stew, and he's like, what good is, I'm a dead man anyways, what good is my birthright? But Nimrod was a horrible guy, and
oh
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, Nicole.
Yeah, even so that could totally be true. But I even like looking at this or the simple reading, probably the reading that most of us grew up with was that Esau was out hunting and maybe he didn't get his kill. And so now he's been out for multiple days and he's really, really hungry. And he
Yeah,
comes in and he smells this amazing soup and he's like, I'm famished. I'm gonna die. How many times have all of us said that? Some phrase of that sort, right? I'm so hungry I could die.
right.
And I think biblically there is a pattern and a teaching that we are deceived by our stomachs. And
Yeah,
and you even alluded to this with Jacob being raised in luxury. He never experienced anything bad. Everything was perfect, and he was probably well fed his entire life. And most of us could say that too. There's always food in the fridge, and you never go hungry. But that, the first couple times that, you go without food for a whole meal or maybe half a day or, whatever, it is a brain and spiritual discipline that you have to develop in order to be okay. And you see that with Yeshua. He was tempted in the desert by bread. It's like that, yeah, just the last few years, that's been something that's been really on my heart. It's like, I do believe, especially if we think we're coming into the end times, that's going to be one of the greatest temptations is
I
food.
love that.
We have to train our heart or our head and our spirit to be okay because you can go a long time without food. But if your brain says you can't, well, you're not going to make it. So I see that in here as well. And then the other thing that I find fascinating in these last couple chapters is that we always see the Bible's pretty good at telling us what the people's desire is, and it's usually a cultural desire. So here we have in these days, having children was of utmost importance because that passes on the spirit of the father and to the wife. If she didn't rear sons, then it was worthless. Like there was no point to her life. And the more sons you had, the more prominent you were in society. I think it's absolutely fascinating that, Rachel and Rebecca were both barren. So God was testing them on their heart and testing them like everyone around them. They were scorned in front of everyone around them. And then when they do finally have children, they don't get 12. They don't just pop out babies. They get two children. That's it. Rachel and Rebecca, only two children. And you're like, how are you supposed to grow a lineage, that outnumbers the sand on the seashore when you only get two kids? But with God, all things are possible. And I just think it's so cool how God challenges our cultural norms. And they might not have even had any idea that what their culture wanted was not what God wanted, or that, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's cool.
I love it. Good insight. I like what you were saying too, to rewind on your first point. Abraham was rich. We forget how filthy rich Abraham was. Oh my gosh. He had so much So yeah, I would agree on your point that Isaac was well fed. He didn't lack anything. And so yeah, I agree. And I agree on your point about food. We can go a long time without food. And I'm just was thinking as you were saying there, maybe that's why we have to do and practice those fast days. Is it's not it's a because they say as soon as you go without food, you start your spiritual attuneness starts honing in because you're not relying on food, that you have to rely on something more spiritual. So I thought that was a really good point. And then on your point about the fertility and the twins, yeah, great point. And the patience, especially the culture today, you're not looked on, women aren't looked down on so much if they don't have children. I mean, maybe there's an element there, but it was, I can imagine if I put myself into the story back then, it was way different. And it was, you were really ostracized and looked down on if you didn't have children. So, yeah, I thought your point was very, very well made, Nicole.
We're complete opposite culture now. Women are looked down on if they have too many children.
Too many children. Yeah.
Which is like more than 3. That's too many.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have any comments before I need a reader for chapter 26? So be thinking, someone volunteer, please. That's the first chapter, and we've already had an hour discussion. So we're off to a great start.
I'm
Nicole,
happy to volunteer for
Alex,
26.
Thank you, Alex. Take it away. We're going to read about a famine in the land. We're going to read about how Isaac tells Abimelech that Rebecca is his sister, like not the same Abimelech. So I just wanted to point that out. This is not the same Abimelech. Abimelech is like Pharaoh. Pharaoh is just a title. Abimelech is a king of Gerar. So it's like a pharaoh, but it's not his name. See, it's how important it is to understand names versus titles. That's interesting. And so, sorry, you go take it away, Alex. I just wanted to point that out.
All right, I was waiting. That's a useful explanation. Thank you. So, chapter 26. And there was a scarcity of food in the land, besides the first scarcity of food, which was in the days of Abraham. And Yitzhak went to Abimelech, sovereign of the Pelashites in Gerar. And Yahovah appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Misraim. Live in the land which I command you. Sojourn in this land, and I shall be with you and barak you. For I give all these lands to you and your seed, and I shall establish the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I shall increase your seed like the stars of the Shamayim, and I shall give all these lands to your seed. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be barak, because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torah. And Yitzhak dwelt in Gerar. And when the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, She is my sister, for he was afraid to say, She is my wife, lest the men of the place should kill me for Rivkah, because she is good looking. And it came to be, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, sovereign of the Pelashites, looked through a window, and he watched and saw Yitzhak playing with Rivkah, his wife. So Abimelech called Yitzhak and said, See, truly she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister?
Okay, stop. I got one comment. We talked about this word before, but if they were just joking around, Isaac and Rebecca, how could the king say, She's your wife? You told me she was your sister.
Yeah, I'm guessing when it says playing, it's not translated correctly.
They were doing something that connected them as husband and wife. Something
And why
exclusive
is it?
to
What
husband
is it
and
about?
wife.
Yeah, what is it about these people? I mean, at least Abraham was half right, but this is a complete deception. What the heck's going on?
Yeah. Again, deception, right? I think
Yeah.
there's a theme emerging. Yeah, sorry. I just had to point that out. We talked about this word in an it's linked to the time when Isaac and Ishmael, the brothers, right? Abraham's two sons were Ishmael was mocking or sporting or playing with Isaac that caused Isaac's mom, Sarah, to get so upset that she kicked Ishmael out. This is the same word. So something was going, it's more than just joking around, is what I'm trying to highlight. Okay, go ahead.
Interesting. It's the same word, but you would think a different meaning. Okay. Verse 9. So Abimelech called Yitzhak and said, "See, truly she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister?" And Yitzhak said to him, "Because I said, lest I die on account of her." And Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people had almost lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." And Abimelech commanded all his people, saying, "He who touches this man or his wife shall certainly be put to death." And Yitzhak sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and Yahovah barak him. And the man grew great and went forward until he became very great. And he came to have possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great body of servants. And the Pelashites envied him. And the Pelashites had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and filled them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Yitzhak, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Yitzhak went from there and pitched his tent in the Wadi Gerar and dwelt there. And Yitzhak dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Pelashites had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he called them by the names which his father had called them. But when Yitzhak's servants dug in the wadi and found a well of running water there, the herdsmen of Gerar strove with Yitzhak's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him.
Now, a
And
sec
they
is contention.
okay.
Contention. Okay.
And they dug another well, and they strove over that one too, and he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not strive over it. And he called its name Rehoboth, and said, "For now Yahovah has made room for us, and we shall bear fruit in the land." And from there he went up to Beersheba, and Yahovah appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the Elohim of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you, and shall barak you and increase your seed for my servant Abraham's sake." And he built an altar there and called on the name of Yahovah. And he pitched his tent there, and the servants of Yitzhak dug a well there. And Abimelech came to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, one of his friends, and Pichol, the commander of his army. And Yitzhak said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing you have hated me and have sent me away from you?" But they said, "We have clearly seen that Yahovah is with you." And we said, "Please let there be an oath between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you do no evil to us, as we have not touched you, and as we have done only good toward you, and have sent you away in peace. You are now barak by Yahovah." And he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And they rose early in the morning and swore an oath with one another. And Yitzhak let them go, and they departed from him in peace. And on the same day it came to be that the servants of Yitzhak came and informed him about the well which they had dug, and said to him, We have found water. So he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. And when Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Yahudith, the daughter of Beri, and Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they were a bitterness of spirit to Yitzhak and Rivkah.
I'm sorry, Alex. How old was Esau?
40.
And
Now,
what did we say?
where have we come across 40 before?
Yeah, that might we know that 40 is a testing, is a trial or a testing. And I find it really interesting. We're talking all about Isaac here, and then at the very end it talks about Esau was 40, taking these two wives from the Hittites that I just find that really, really interesting. Nicole.
And didn't we read earlier that Isaac was 40 when he
Yeah.
also married?
Yeah.
Yes.
There, that's the point I wanted to make, and Alex, this might help you too. We don't, like, the Bible doesn't always give us things in order of sequence, right? So if we read in Genesis 25 that Isaac was 40 when he married Rebekah, and then we get the story about his sons and the story of the birthright. But then in chapter 26, we're told that Esau is 40 when he takes his wives. Well, then Isaac and Esau are the same age. So Esau was probably already married to these Canaanite women or the Hittite women before. So Isaac had a reason to want to take the birthright because his brother has already gone astray.
Sorry, do you mean Jacob?
Or sorry,
Ah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I am talking Esau.
Esau's brother.
No, sorry, Jacob and Esau. Yes, I said Isaac.
Esau's brother Jacob, yes.
Right. So this comes into that question of, is deceit ever a good thing? So Isaac, in a sense, had a righteous reason to want to take the birthright from his brother because his brother was already producing a lineage outside of God's order. And Jacob
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, Jacob had a righteous desire to produce a righteous lineage. So that's where yeah.
That's excellent, Nicole. Excellent.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
So the order becomes really important as well. Yeah, Chrissy.
I find it fascinating that Jacob and Esau were a part of this whole thing, and the king didn't put the pieces together that Rebecca had these two sons. Like, where would they have come from and all this stuff? Like, just doesn't add up to me. Like, how he got so confused in thinking that it was Isaac's sister. Like, her sons were grown, so did they just pretend to be best friends? Like, it's so confusing to me.
Or were they with them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? They might not have been with them. But yeah, that's a great point, Chrissy. I never looked at it like that at all. That's a really great question. You, Annie?
Yeah, in ancient Hebrew custom, if you marry within the family, like let's say a cousin, as was as what happened, it can be considered a sister or a brother. It's weird because that's not what we know, but in the ancient tradition, it could be used as that. And so he was going by that since he had gone back and his wife came from the same family that Abraham's family and wife came from. I did a deep dive on this, and it was kind of weird reasoning to me, but that's what the Hebrew culture insisted back then was still considered kosher as a brother or a sister if they married into the same family.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome, you guys. Good discussion. So basically, there's this famine in the land. They go down to Gerar. Isaac camps near Gerar Valley and he redigs some wells called contention, opposition, and broad places. So, there's some good teachings out there about why they're called that. That's really interesting. Alex, your version said something, they didn't call them Philistines. My Bible in English says that they were Philistines. I forget, yours was like plush team or like what were they? You're on mute. Sorry, Alex. What was the what
Sorry, familiarize yourself with the mute button. My version says Pelashites.
Palashites. Okay, that I thought was really interesting because you think about Palestine today. How do you say Philistine in Greek is Palestine? How do you say Palestine in Hebrew? Philistine. So that's just saying, that's just interesting to me. It's just really, really interesting. So I wanted to show on a map that where this is. Okay, so if you look on my little map here, because I'm like, okay, this is King Abimelech land. This Gerar, right? This is where these 3 wells of water were dug, found in Genesis 26:17, called contention, opposition, and broad places. Then they had to travel from Gerar to Beersheba, and this is where that 4th well, Sheba, was made, and that's why that's called Sheba to this day, Beersheba. It says right, you just read it in the Torah. That's interesting to me. Then at some point they had to make it from Beersheba back to Hebron, because you know that Isaac he dies and he's buried in the cave of Machpelah. So they had to go back, make that journey back there. I think that that's really interesting. So Jacob does return to Hebron to his father Isaac. Later on, we'll see that in Genesis 35:27. Isaac is 110 and Jacob is 50. Isaac dies at 180, and you can find that in Genesis 35:28. So I just had to I'm visual, so I had to kind of see what was going on here on a map. So any thoughts on that, Xander? No? Okay. Okay, good. I did you guys notice, Alex, when you were reading verse 5 of 26, it says here, because Abraham listened or shmad to my voice and heeded my charge, my commands, my statutes, and my Torah. And I thought that was just an interesting way that the Torah separated those things. So when you say keep my charge, I found this little teaching where it refers to decrees to distancing himself from transgressing the warnings of the Torah. For example, secondary prohibitions to prevent incest from occurring. That's like for example, and then also prohibitions of the Sabbath. I found that. Okay, so I'm processing. My commandments, referring to things that haven't been yet written. So like we haven't been given the 10 commandments. Does this refer to what's orally passed down up until that point? My statutes, referring to the evil inclination and the nations of the world argue against without understanding. So, for example, eating pork, wearing garments of wool and linen, for which no reason is given, but the decree of the king and his statutes over his subjects. So that's interesting. And then my instructions, my Torah, in all its forms, oral and written as taught by Melchizedek, to include the oral law, the laws given to Moses from Sinai. So I just find it, I guess I just have a question as to why the Torah, we were not given the commandments yet. We know the Torah are the first 5 books of the Bible. We're only in Genesis. And so I find it curious how this was written this way, that Abraham kept, he only shmad, he listened to the voice of Yahovah. He kept the charge, he kept the commands, he kept the statutes, and he kept the laws. And I found that really interesting. Again, it would further provide evidence that there was an oral Torah, that Torah existed before it being written down. So that was just my thoughts. Did anyone else have any kind of thoughts on that, or any comments on anything else? You, Annie? You're on mute, you, Annie.
I was having trouble getting my thing to come up to unmute.
Oh,
Sorry. No, the Torah existed all the way from Noah. I can say that now because we have the Mayan records released and the different others, and the Torah was actually given, but it was handed down more or less orally. But when the natives, just a minute, my neighbor, when the natives came to America, after the dispersion of the children of Noah, the records came across here, and then later, the records. There's been 4 or 5 different crossings where they came to the Americas, and each of them brought a copy of the laws of God. They weren't called the Torah, but they were the laws of God and the commandments. And so they've been here in the Americas, like I say, since the time of Noah, when his children spread out through the earth, and the first natives returned back to here. It's interesting that in the world, when Noah's children spread out, the gospel went with them, but then they only kept the parts they liked. The only person that kept them in the fullness was Abraham, and that line, until they went and they came back from Egypt. And at that time is when people of the non lineage of Abraham could be brought in, when the Torah said, if they keep the commandments, they are as one born among. But before that, it was only kept in the family, so to speak. This is new knowledge that's now coming out, because the Indians, or Ephraim and Manasseh, are now releasing the records. And I'm going to be sending out a link this week to you, and if you could spread it to everybody on your list. But yeah, they always had, from Adam on down, the laws of God, but only a very few kept it. And Abraham became Abraham in the east of the world, because he did keep that above everybody else on the planet, and he honored God, so God honored him.
always interesting, you, Annie. Always interesting. Thank you for that. I have a question for the group. Why do you think now we've read twice how Abraham and Isaac have both hid the identity of their wives, lied to the king of Gerar, lied to Abimelech, two different kings, telling him that their wife was their sister? Why do you think spiritually, can you think, like, I can think of something spiritually that comes to mind, but I'm curious what you guys think of why is that occurring in our Torah portion? Chrissy.
It says that it's because of fear. Like, I don't know about Abraham, I can't remember, but I know with Isaac we read it was because he was afraid. And because that always bugged me. I'm like, well, how could you be afraid? Like, do you not see how God works, or how? But then I'm like, well, how many times am I faced with things that I'm afraid of? And I forget sometimes how great our God is. So not that hard, I guess, for me to understand. But yeah, in my Bible, it says because he was afraid.
So you're kind of saying, like, where's your trust, man? Or don't you put your trust in Yahovah to protect you?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. You, Annie?
Well, it is fear. Um, because remember, the world that they were in is totally different from the world we were in, and a king was total power. He was the law. Whatever he wanted, he could do, and nobody would backtalk him because he had the army and his guards and everything else. And also, there was Babylon and Nimrod was a hunter of men. That means he went out and he just took what he wanted. So the powerful back then, unless you had your own private army like Abraham did and wealth to protect you, um, the men in power did what they wanted, whether it was just or unjust. And this
Well, they
was,
did, but Abraham still, like, they still lied. So my
yes.
question is, why? Why do you think they lied?
Well, it was that fear because if you had a powerful man that could do whatever he wanted, and he thought your wife was beautiful, he could kill you and nobody would blink an eyelash, and he could
Yeah.
take it. So there was that. It's a normal, rational fear, and yes, he could have depended on God, but his faith was not that 100%. It was good enough, but it was still not total.
Yeah,
And
I hear what you're saying. You, Annie, you make a really good point. I hear what you're saying. It's like there's a part of being just smart. Like you don't want to go
yeah,
in saying, "Look at my beautiful wife," and kings have a reputation of just taking what they want. You're a dead man. He'd
yep,
kill you and take your wife. So
yeah.
there's a part of being smart, and that's why I brought up that question. Is it okay to deceive somebody, lie and say that she's my sister? Is that okay? Is that smart or is that deception?
Well, it could be more or less wisdom because
Yeah,
there is deception when you want to deceive, but if there's being smart or wise, the Lord allows wisdom
yeah, yeah.
and
Good
call
point.
that.
Good point. Alex, let's go over to you. You got your hand up.
It reminds me of our earlier discussions when you talk about the death of a husband and the wife then being free to remarry. So it sort of links into that.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's kind of what I had thought. I had saw this teaching and it got me thinking, and just take it for what it's worth, that Abraham and Isaac have hidden their wives from Abraham hides Sarah, Isaac hides Rebecca. This is and Abraham's the father of our faith, and Isaac is his son. So both the father and the son hide the bride at different times. And maybe there's some symbolism there in the hiding of the woman, or Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, among the nation over these thousands of years. Maybe, maybe not. I'm just saying I heard a teaching and I thought that was interesting. Alex?
Well, also, if you think about end times, and Israel will be hidden from Satan during those final times. So there could be like a I can't think of the word, but it's like a repeat of that, isn't it? It's
Right.
similar.
A parallel.
Yeah, symbolic. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Symbolic. Yeah. Very good. Nicole?
Are are these not the same kings that
No.
Abraham deceived? And well, it uses the exact same names, Abimelech, the king of Gerar.
My understanding, I could be wrong. And Nicole, maybe you want to take that back and look. But when I looked into that, I was told well, it was Google. I mean, I looked through Google and some articles that when you are Abimelech, Malek in Hebrew is king.
Hmm.
So that's like a pharaoh. So if you are the king of Gerar, you're called an Abimelech. So my understanding is that these are two different kings.
Okay.
And maybe I'm wrong, but that is my limited understanding when I looked into it. However, whether it's the same king or a different king, like we don't get the name of Abimelech, but we know he's the king of Gerar. Um, If it's the same king, that's even worse because this king must be going, I've been deceived twice, saying she's my sister from this beautiful woman. But if it's a different king, which I believe it is, it's a different king. I think that there's a parallel story there that we can't ignore. It's glaring at me saying, okay, what is the Torah trying to tell us this? That there this hiding of the bride here, this hiding of the woman. And I just wanted to. I think it's interesting, Christine.
But the interesting part is that in Genesis 26 is the first time that we're told that the king of Gerar is a Philistine.
Oh yeah, they're in
So
that.
that,
If you go back, that makes sense because if you go back to this map, keep talking, Nicole, because that is the land of the Philistines where they are.
yeah, so it plays into the fear thing because there's always been rivalry, especially between the Hebrews and the Philistines. And we can obviously see
Yeah.
that today.
And that would make sense why they were scared of this Abimelech.
Yeah.
Abraham was scared, but remember Abimelech, he was honorable. He gave Abraham land. He says you can dwell wherever you want. And then so we see this honorableness of this king in that land. Christine.
Matthew 10:16 says, Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So maybe that's what they felt when they had to be cleverly dishonest. Yeah.
Deceive. Yeah, on that theme. Great verse to point out, Christine. Wow. Nicole?
Just tying in, Christine, your comment earlier in the chat, and then Chrissy's comment in the chat right now. The one thing I always go back to on this thought of, is it ever okay to lie? I read The Hiding Place, like Corrie Ten Boom. And the one part of that story that always like has stuck with me for years now is there's during the Holocaust and they're trying to save Jewish people and they're hiding them in their homes, and the authorities are coming and dragging these Jewish people out and killing them or putting them in jail. It was just a death sentence if you were found out that you were a Jew. And so they had to employ quite a bit of deception in order to keep these Jewish people safe. But at one point, the one sister, Corey's sister, she did not believe that it was ever okay to lie. And they had a Jewish woman in their home, and the authorities show up and they just point blank ask her, are you harboring any Jews in your home? And she said, yes. And so they drug this Jewish lady out and they threw her in jail. And like Corrie Ten Boom, like the whole family was so mad at the sister. They were just like basically thinking they couldn't even trust her anymore. Like, how could you condemn her to death by saying yes? And her reply was, God says not to lie. I trust that he'll take care of her. And sure enough, 2 days later, I forget what it was, but it was almost like the Bible story, like the locks just came off on the prison door and she just walked out. And she was totally fine. So I think, to me, the answer is there is never a 100% right, and I'd say there's more often a 100% wrong than there is a 100% right. And sometimes you have to choose, the best choice. And I think the gold standard is not to lie. But if you're in a position where you have to choose one of God's highest standards of preserve life, there might be a couple ways that you can do that. And there might still be a better option that's going to take a heck of a lot more faith to do, such as that story. But it maybe not necessarily completely wrong to take the deceptive option either. So I don't know. I feel like to me that story alone gives a great picture on you could do good in multiple ways. And if you're following God's heart, it should turn out okay in the end.
It's a great example because, how would we respond in that situation? I'm almost thinking about like, okay, the first thing that comes to my mind is maybe I would say to the soldier, "Oh yeah, right. If you go ahead and have a look, So I'm not lying, but I'm saying, knock yourself out. Do you see anybody here? Try to find somebody. I don't know because yeah, but it begs an ethical question. It's a great discussion. You, Annie?
There. Sorry, it's taking me trouble to unmute. The thing is, we're told that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have made it to heaven, and they're sitting with the Lord on his throne. Uh, what's interesting is the Lord says, "My ways are not your ways," and what we consider deceptive. Apparently, the Lord didn't because he accepted them and not only accepted them, but allowed them to come sit with him in his glory. So it's when I look at their lives and what God has already said he's accepted, it begs me to want to not judge or say this is deceptive, but I tend to think it is wisdom because the whole thing of the scriptures from the tree of knowledge, what is it supposed to do? Give us wisdom. The whole thing in Psalms and but more Proverbs is to gain wisdom. The whole point is for us to exercise the wisdom of God in our relationship and gain that relationship. So I think that maybe us thinking him lying or being deceptive, there's he knew the Lord a lot better than we do, and it was acceptable. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I tend to reserve judgment on that one.
Yeah, that's smart, you, Annie, for sure. Why we're to be as wise as a serpent, gentle of a dove, it says. So what does that mean? Wow.
Yeah.
Great point. Chrissy and then Christine.
Um, Even to go off that, like we don't know, like oftentimes if you sit alone with God and he starts to speak to you, like how do we know that that wasn't what Isaac was told? We don't know the whole entire conversations that he would have with God, because that would be within himself. So maybe that was something that he was told to do. Maybe that was something that he prayerfully considered. I know it says he did it out of fear, but I just know, like, when we're talking about that, it's like using your discernment and what is God telling you to do in that moment. And I guess if you're open to what God is telling you to do, then you're going to do it, I guess. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
Or what voice? How do you know it's God's voice and not a deceiver's voice?
Yeah, you got to get really good at knowing his voice.
Yeah, you do. You got to know him. You got to know his character. You got to know his word. You got to know what he loves and know what he hates. And yeah, Christine, such a good point. This is a good discussion because it's something I've been thinking about this week. Christine.
Very good. Yeah. Just interesting that I don't know, was he a king or who was that guy that returned his wife?
Yeah,
That they
Abimelech.
knew the laws. Yeah, they knew the laws. They knew the consequence. They didn't want to not obey. They had seen enough. So that was a little bit of protection for them, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're sort of living in the opposite right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Lore.
Hi. Maybe I should just introduce myself quickly.
Yeah, introduce yourself. Say hi to the group.
Yeah, hi everybody. My Nicole's my daughter. I've actually kind of feel like I've gotten to know quite a few of you because I've been watching for the last I don't know 3 months, watching the videos on YouTube. I've been in a different country, so joining you at this time was a little difficult. But yeah, so hello, and nice to meet
Welcome.
all of you. I was just going to throw something in there about. Does anybody remember the story in First Kings 22 when God asks his divine council if there was anybody that was willing to go deceive Ahab, King Ahab? Does anybody remember that story?
Right. It's foggy. It's foggy.
Oh
Refresh
yeah,
us.
I
Yeah.
remember that one
Well,
well.
I just thought of it, so I don't remember the details either, but he does. He asks them, wasn't it there's 400 prophets involved? Wasn't that part of it?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, there were all these prophets that were prophesying that they were going to go and win, and that what it was, God asked everybody in attendance, okay, I need this king to go do this and die. Uh, who has a plan? And one of the spirits stepped forth and said, I will become a lying and a deceiving spirit in the mouths of all the prophets to
Yep.
tell the king that he should go and that he will be victorious. And then it was, I believe, Elijah that told him, no, this guy's lying to you. But they listened to all the lying prophets. But it was a
Yeah.
spirit sent forth from God to deliberately deceive that king so he would go and he would die, and the judgment against him would be pronounced.
So I just think it's kind of interesting that God would do that. And in regard to, the commandment that God gives us, this is what I've understood is it's it doesn't say thou shalt not lie. It says thou shalt not bear false witness. So bearing false witness means you would be putting somebody else in harm's way by you're lying about what you saw or they did, and which could put them, that might be the death penalty. It could be something quite severe. So in my understanding, it's not so much lying, but it's bearing false witness. So in the case of, the Gestapo coming in and asking you, well, are you harboring any Jews? Um, there's two ways to look at that. Like Nicole said that story, but the other way would be if you said no. I mean, you're trying to preserve life, and I think there's the whole idea of kol vamer, the light and heavy, which we don't understand in our culture very well. You know, we're faced often with situations in our like that come up where we have to make a choice, and either choice is going to be breaking one of God's laws. But that's where we got to determine which one's light and which one's heavy. So, um, yeah, in the case of lying that you're harboring a Jew, you're preserving life. So God's not going to judge you based on, a lie. So that's just the way I see it.
That's a really great point. And it's protecting life,
Preserving life
preserving life, and yeah,
outweighs, keeping the Sabbath or lying, right?
right, right. Chrissy.
What I like about that too is that God has also made it clear that he can use anything for his good. And so in this case, you could actually say that he used this situation, he used Isaac's fear for good, in that Abimelech then knew or became aware or already knew or renewed or whatever his understanding of Jehovah. So he used something for good in that.
Very good. Good thoughts, you guys. Well, speaking of deception, Annie, sorry, you have one more point, and then I wanted to go to the next chapter.
Well, like it says in Scripture, all things work to the good of those who love God, love and obey God. And so it's not a question of right or wrong as we judge it, but again, God's thoughts are not our thoughts, his ways are not our ways. And a lot of people tend to forget that this is God's kingdom. And in God's kingdom, God rules everything, good, bad, and indifferent. And he he's the author of all of it, although he does not do it. He allows Hasatan or ourselves to commit the evil, but he only allows evil to a certain point. And but he nothing evil can happen without his permission. Take Job in the book there. So it's a question of us knowing God, having a relationship good enough that we can make the proper decisions, as was said, the heavier or the lighter, so we can make the choice that's pleasing to God because we know him, not because we're judging out of ourselves, because judging out of ourselves is always going to be wrong.
Thank you. Thanks, you, Annie. Okay, so Esau at the end of the chapter chooses against what his father says. He marries Judith, the daughter of a Hittite, and Basmath, the daughter of Elon, Mahalalel, the daughter of Ishmael. And so we're going to now read in Genesis chapter 27, where we see this big deception going on, the famous deception of Jacob deceiving his father Isaac and what happens with that. So can I have a reader for chapter 27? And then we'll do a check-in. Are you guys wanting a break now before we dive into 27, or do you think we could power through, or where are you guys at? I'm going to pause the recording. Chapter 27, can I get a reader? Yeah, thanks, Sander.
And it came to be, when Yitzchak was old and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called Esau his elder son and said to him, My son. And he answered him, Here I am. And he said, See now, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt wild game for me. And make me a tasty dish, such as I love, and bring it to me to eat, in order that my being does bless you before I die. And Rivkah heard when Yitzhak spoke to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt wild game and to bring it. And Rivkah spoke to Yaakov her son, saying, See, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, Bring me wild game and make me a tasty dish to eat, and bless you in the presence of Yahweh before my death. And now, my son, listen to my voice according to what I command you. Please go to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, and I make a tasty dish from them for your father, such as he loves. And you shall take it to your father, and he shall eat it, so that he might bless you before his death. And Yaakov said to Rivkah, his mother, See, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. What if my father touches me? Then I shall be like a deceiver in his eyes, and shall bring a curse on myself, and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, get them for me. And he went and fetched them, and brought them to his mother, and his mother made a tasty dish, such as his father loved. And Rivkah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Yaakov, her younger son. And she put the skins of the young goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the tasty dish and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Yaakov. And he went to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? And Yaakov said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you said to me. Please rise, sit and eat of my wild game, so that your being might bless me. But Yitzchak said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because Yahweh your Elohim brought it to me. Then Yitzchak said to Yaakov, Please come near, so that I feel you, my son, whether you truly are my son Esau or not. And Yaakov went near to Yitzchak his father, and he felt him, and said, The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, and he blessed him. And he said, Are you truly my son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, Bring it near to me, and let me eat of my son's wild game, so that my being might bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Yitzhak said to him, Please come near and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him. And he smelled the smell of his garments, and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which Yahweh has blessed. And Elohim give you of the dew of the heavens, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those cursing you, and blessed be those blessing you. And it came to be, as soon as Yitzhak had finished blessing Yaakov, and Yaakov had hardly left the presence of Yitzhak his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he too had made a tasty dish, and brought it to his father, and said to his father, Let my father rise and eat of his son's wild game, so that your being might bless me. And his father Yitzhak said to him, Who are you? And he said, I am your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Yitzhak trembled exceedingly, and said, Who was it then who hunted wild game and brought it to me? And I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, he is blessed. When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, Bless me too, O my father. And he said, Your brother came with deceit and took your blessing. And Esau said, Was his name then called Yaakov? For he has caught me by the heel these 2 times. He took my birthright, and see, now he has taken my blessing. And he said, Have you not reserved a blessing for me? Then Yitzhak answered and said to Esau, See, I have made him your master, and all his brothers I have given to him as servants. And I have stained him with grain and wine. And what then shall I do for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, Have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Yitzhak his father answered and said to him, See, your dwelling is of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of the heavens from above. And by your sword you are to live, and serve your brother. And it shall be, when you grow restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck. And Esau hated Yaakov because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father draw near, then I am going to kill my brother Yaakov. And the words of Esau, her older son, were reported to Rivkah, and she sent and called Yaakov, her younger son, and said to him, See, your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you, to kill you. And now, my son, listen to my voice, and rise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days, until your brother's wrath turns away, until your brother's displeasure turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. And I shall send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day? And Rivkah said to Yitzhak, I am disgusted with my life because of the daughter of Heth. If Yaakov takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these who are the daughters of the land, what is my life to me?
Okay. And there's just a few verses here. We could probably finish up the portion. There's just a few verses. We're not going to read all of 28. We might as well just finish it and then we'll discuss. So Isaac called Jacob, and he blessed him and commanded him and said to him, You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Rise up, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take a wife for yourself from there, from the daughters of Laban, the brother of your mother. And may God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and add to you, and may you become an assembly of nations, and may he give to you the blessing of Abraham, to your seed with you, for you to possess the land of your travels, which God gave to Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. And Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife for himself there. In his blessing, he had commanded him, saying, "You shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan." And that Jacob obeyed his father and mother and went to Padan Aram. And when Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan were evil in the eyes of his father Isaac, then Esau went to Ishmael and took Malahath, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, Nebajoth's sister. To his wives he added her for his wife. So that's the end of our Torah portion, you guys. And this is there's lots in this deceptive story. So you got Rebekah overhearing Isaac say to Esau to bring him game. Rebekah and Jacob deceive Isaac. Isaac blesses Jacob, gives him the blessing. So now Jacob has the birthright and the blessing instead of Esau. Esau is ticked off at this, so angry he threatens to kill Jacob. So Jacob gets instruction from his mom Rebekah, and Rebekah's like, "Listen, go to your uncle's house, Laban, because otherwise I'm going to be bereaved of two sons." And that's an interesting statement, because that also promotes the idea of, and would fit with the idea of, Nimrod threatening to kill Esau, because why would Rebekah lose both of her sons? That to me makes sense, right? Because if Esau is scared for his life because he's running, or he's, then that fits. But anyways, regardless, Esau is so ticked with Jacob, he wants to kill him. So he's going to his uncle Laban's house. And Laban, remember, is the father of his future wife, right? Because next week we're going to pick up our story where Jacob meets Rebekah. So Jacob is instructed to not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, but to take a wife from Laban's daughters. And when Esau, it's interesting because Esau sees that taking a wife from the daughters of Canaan is evil, and he's like, "I'm going to do it. They don't want me. I'm so mad. They don't want me taking a wife from the daughters of Canaan, so that's what I'm going to do." You can see the rebellious nature of Esau there. And did you notice in verse 19, verse 20, and verse 24 that Jacob lies 3 times? So this is what I'm asking. He gets the blessing, he gets the birthright, but he full on lies 3 times. He lied here in verse 19 when he says, Jacob said to his father, "I'm your firstborn Esau." Lie. Right? And then again in verse 20, "Who are you, my son?" He asked him again. And Jacob said, "I'm your firstborn Esau. I have done to you as to me. Rise up now, sit and eat my game, so your soul may bless me." And Isaac said to his son, "How have you quickly found it?" Here's the second lie. "Because Jehovah your God made it come to me." Really? Is that what happened? No, I think we just read in the story that Rebekah killed 2 goats and then she prepared it and then Jacob brought it. So that's a second lie he told his father. And then the third lie he told his father is all the way down in verse 24. He said, "Are you then my son Esau?" He asks him again. And he said, "I am." So I have a hard time reconciling this in my head, right? Like these are 3 lies. He didn't just lie once. He lied 3 times to his dad, as well as, did you notice that Isaac tests to see if this is his son by all 5 senses? He uses all 5 of his senses. So let me tell you what I mean. He uses, he's blind, so he can't see very good, right? And so he says in verse, "How have you quick," his sight was the only, he's blind. So, but by feel, verse 21, Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near that let me feel you, whether you are my son Esau or not." So there's the sense of touch. Then go down to verse 22, and he says, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are Esau's. So there he uses hearing because he's listening to the voice of his son. Then go down to verse 27. He came and kissed him and smelled the odor of his clothes, and he blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is the smell of the field which Jehovah blessed. He's using his sense of smell. And then the taste of the game following verses. He tastes the meal and he's like, oh yeah, this is good. So that to me, I thought was really interesting how Isaac tests this. There has to have been some sort of doubt in Isaac's mind, and there's 3 lies being told, and yet Jacob still receives the blessing. It's interesting, you, Annie.
Yeah, again, it's Yaakov was told by his mother, no, this is all going to be on me. So here he had 2 parents, and he was told by one to go against the other, of the other's wishes. But for a reason of her knowledge of the kingdom, and then he put his faith in his mother, so he went and got the goats for her and let her do the thing. But it was interesting because here was a son that she knew was in disobedience and had gone out and married wrong women and was ignoring the gospel, not being obedient. And Jacob was the obedient son. And so, even though the father was in the wrong because he was doting on his oldest, God made sure that it got, sometimes the mother, her word is just as important as the father. And especially in native culture. But the point being, we need to follow God. And the mother says, hey, he's taken a wife out of who he shouldn't have. He's disobeying. So I want to make this right. Plus, I don't want my other son to marry wrong. So she did this in defiance of her husband and said, let the curse be upon me. And he, being an obedient son and knowing what was taught, decided to follow that. And so they took the higher road, even though it was a lie. And again, what we covered over the lies last time, there are lies, and then there are deception, just choosing to do wrong and bear false witness. And although he bore false witness on the truth of that matter, he was still following the path of Jehovah. It's a fine line, but it is there in the story.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, Annie, in the fact that if Jacob wouldn't have listened to his mother, he would have been breaking Torah, not listening to the voice of his mother, because you're supposed to honor and obey your parents. So that's really interesting. I never thought about it. That's a really good point. Chrissy.
I think the one thing that I find super interesting is how Isaac could tell the difference between their voices. And he's obviously taking this so seriously that he's smelling Jacob, he's touching Jacob, he's using all 5 senses. But when it comes to the hearing part, he hears that it's Jacob. He knows. And something that I know with my own children, like I can hear, like my girls share a room, and I can hear which kid is coughing, and I know what kid is coughing. Like I know my children's voices. And so in my mind, it goes to like, well, how as a parent, that is his voice, that's Jacob's voice. Why wouldn't you postpone this whole blessing thing? You know what, son? Something's not adding up here. Like all the other things are fitting the profile, but you don't sound like my other son. So I'm going to, whether it's waiting until both of them are standing side by side and he can do this right, or whether it's like, it's just very interesting to me that he didn't just either pause that. I don't know if maybe at that point, I don't know the way that went. Like maybe you couldn't postpone it once you started this ceremony or whatever. But it's just very interesting how that didn't tip him off enough to be like, you know what, we're not doing this today. I want to wait until I can hear both of you or whatever.
Good point. And trust maybe had something to do with trusting his senses. Maybe my senses are deceiving me. But it sounds like that's a really good point. Laura.
I haven't fully formulated what I'm thinking, so maybe you guys can help me draw it out. I think there's something really important and significant about the whole inheritance thing. I think Rebecca, she knew the promise that was given to Abraham. And so she saw something, and she knew that this lineage had to be passed, this inheritance had to go to her son Jacob. And so I think there's something to that, this whole inheritance. It's physical and it's spiritual. And she saw that. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about a teaching I had like we see this isn't the first time where a woman took matters into her own hands. So she knew like what you were saying exactly. She knew the blessing was going to go to Jacob, and she took matters into her own hands to ensure. I've heard teachings where the woman took it into her own hands to ensure that blessing went there to Jacob, and she didn't trust Jehovah to do it. She took matters in her own hands. And so I think you're onto something there. I don't know how to I don't know exactly how to think about that, because even though that's the where it was supposed to go, because the prophecy was in the womb, like the younger will serve the greater, like we know that that's where it was going. She could have been not patient enough. Was she wrong? Was she right? Like, I don't know, but you raise a really good point. A really good point. Do you have any more to kind of comment on that, Laura, before I go to Destin and Yuani?
No, I was just kind of teasing it out in my own mind and hoping you guys could
Could help you out.
fill in the blanks.
I can't help you.
100% lore, like you're all over it, and that's mainly what I see about this whole story is about is the Lord has a strange way of giving you what you sow, of reaping the consequences for your action. This is one of the biggest stories from the beginning, I believe, not only of the end times, which I'll show, but this inherited birthright, this being firstborn, linking to being born again into the kingdom of God, is what? Now you have a spiritual birthright, an inheritance, and it is up to you. With this great gift also comes great responsibility. You can also give up your inherited birthright, which we see in, oh, maybe this once saved, always saved isn't always the case. Because if you blaspheme the Holy Spirit, that's one thing that you can't give. That is, biblically speaking, in the concept of what I believe what we see here, and it's written all over it, of you can usurp your birthright. Now, was Rebecca wrong or right? I think this is just a story about being careful. You will reap what you sow. From the very beginning, Jacob was wrestling with the womb. His mom went to the Lord and said, "Why is this?" I believe that this wrestling of the nations, which is evident in scripture, started from the beginning. This wrestling, this usurping of the birthright. No wonder he said the last will serve the first. What if, I mean, this is speculation, so I shouldn't even say it, but I believe that there is this theory of wrestling in the womb, and his mom going to the Lord going, why is this happening? And the Lord's response is, you have two nations, and Jacob, the heel grabber, was, I believe, and we see this all through scripture, Jacob's lot in life from the Lord for some reason was to wrestle with Esau, was wrestling just like he wrestled with the angel. And he would not let go of the angel of Peniel before what? I will not let you go until you bless me. He's had this lot in life of wrestling. He was not letting go with Esau, who was wrestling with him in the womb from the very beginning, usurping his birthright. I believe this concept is showing two characteristics: the characteristics of Jacob from the beginning and the characteristics of Esau from the beginning. Then we fast forward the story as we just read, and we go, oh my goodness, Esau couldn't give a crap about his birthright. And he goes, I'll sell you my birthright for a bowl of red lentil stew. He made that vow. He willingly gave up his birthright. And now fast forward to the end, we're surprised when the Lord devises this plan with his mother and his hairy skin to it looks like a deceive, but this is the Lord, I believe, bringing it back. No, 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 no. This blessing belongs to Jacob. I knew this was going to happen from the beginning. I said the younger will, or the older will serve the younger. That these two nations, just like Cain and Abel, one sacrifice was accepted or was better and accepted, and the other wasn't. And we see the same concept here of then Esau hating his brother, this usurping of the birthright. He didn't care because maybe it wasn't his to begin with, because from the very beginning, the Lord said that the younger will serve the older, knowing that this would happen, I believe. And then he goes, oh my goodness, you're so careless. No wonder Esau was so careless with his birthright, and he didn't care about it, and he would just sell it off for a bowl of red lentil stew. Maybe, I believe, because it wasn't his to begin with. It had always belonged to Jacob. And knowing that this story would happen, the Lord has a strange way of giving you what you sow. Remember, you gave this up. This was your decision. And now at the end, Esau's all upset that then his father passes on his blessing to Jacob. It's like, no, 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 no. Remember, you asked for this. So what's the problem? And I believe this is the Lord's way of bringing this back. Now, it's very interesting because this goes very deep, and now I'm going to plunge you into the deep end with Destin here. When one was born, we see in Genesis 38. Genesis 38, when twins were born, you would tie a what? A red scarlet thread on one to differentiate the twins, to know which one was the firstborn. You would tie it on the wrist, usually, and you see that in Genesis 38. Now, when the two twins were born, I find it very interesting because colors are very important. And now we see this word red, and that's a very important word. That word red, or Adam, or blood, is the firstborn. It was red and hairy. Same word that Esau was red and hairy when he was born. Then you see it, the same word, for the bowl of red lentil stew. Same word, Adam, red. What I find very interesting is there is so much going on here. This has to do with the end times. This, from the very beginning, has to do with the four horsemen. Have you ever wondered why There's a white horse, there's a red horse, there's a black horse, there's a green horse. Colors are very important, and it's linked to this color right here. From this point, then Esau goes, oh my goodness, I'm taking a wife from the Canaanites. I hate you, everything to do with you. This is, like Deneen pointed out, the beginning of really two nations. The Palestinians, or the Philistines, or Islam, and Jacob, or Israel. The two nations divided, warring against each other. To this very day, this prophecy is coming true. And this is exactly what the warring is of the red horse. That word of the red horse that comes and he's given a great sword. Oh my goodness. This two nations war from the very beginning over this birthright, usurping your birthright of Israel, it's exactly what's going on today. This is huge. This is the red horse of the apocalypse, of the war that is giving its sign right now, that is riding. This is the same word, red horse, is that same, translated back to Hebrew, that word Adam, or red. Red lentil stew, red and hairy Esau, red birthright. He's linking this story has something important to do with the end times, and it has everything to do with the blessing. The one he blessed, Israel, Jacob, and what's the difference if you look back? Genesis, what we just read, he blesses Jacob, and he goes, oh my goodness, there's this blessing here. He gives him the blessing of what he ate of the venison. Then he says something interesting when he blesses Esau. And he goes, and Isaac his father answered him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. And then verse 40 to really hit this home. And by thy sword thou shalt live and serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when they shall have dominion that they shall break the yoke from thy neck. This is linking the time of Jacob's trouble, this birthright from the very beginning, the red horse of the apocalypse, our time today, and this story. And by thy sword thou shalt live. So remember, the red lentil stew, the red horse is linked. And then, and by thy sword thou shalt live. This is why the red horse of Genesis 6 or Revelation 6 is red. Now look at Revelation 6:4. This is the difference between the birthrights. This war that is happening right now has to do with this exact same concept of what we are seeing today. And Revelation 6:4, there's something very peculiar, a key characteristic of the red horse. And when he opened the second seal, I heard a second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, Adam, bloody. And power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, just like Esau was sworn to not have peace with his brother. What's the opposite of peace? Hating his brother for something that he gave up. This very same war over the very two main concepts that we are seeing in our lives today. And he that sat on him, this king, this spirit behind this, to take peace from one another, there was given unto him a great sword. Now, I don't know if I've correctly brought you through making these connections, but they are absolutely huge. I'm a fallible man. But this has everything to do with the red horse of war, linking back to this very story of, yes, what Laura brought up, of you can usurp. And that's exactly what Satan's plan is. Satan's plan is you have been grafted in, you have been considered a firstborn in God's sight. When you are grafted in, he now considers you a firstborn. You are now grafted in as a firstborn son. You have now the inheritance of the kingdom of God by your firstborn birthright, your inheritance from your father. You also have the ability to give up that birthright. And this is where the deception comes. You have the ability, and that's Satan's goal, is to get you to usurp your birthright, to give up your birthright for a bowl of the red horse of war, for the red horse red lentil stew, to give up your birthright. And that's where the deception is.
Yeah, I think you made your point, Dustin. You, Annie.
Yeah. First, what I was originally, and then a little bit about what Destin was talking about. You know, Rebecca had revelation, and in the womb, she was told the younger will serve. I mean, the older will serve the younger. She knew. It's not like she came up with this on her own for whatever reason. God, from the very beginning, gave her revelation that it was going to be Jacob that was going to carry off the kingdom. And then when it came time for her to act, she was following the revelation that God gave her. So it's not like she was coming off on the own just because she was grieved for Esau's wife choice, etc., although that all contributed to it. There comes a time when we know something, but we have to act. And that time came from all the revelation, learning what she learned from Abraham, knowing the importance of serving God, and knowing that God gives revelation to us personally that we have to follow. She acted on it. Then she told her son, don't worry, it's going to be on me. If I'm wrong, if you're wrong, it's going to be on me. But she was acting from the revelations that and the knowledge she obtained from Abraham and how she must follow Yah, and the revelation that Yah gave her that Jacob was going to be supreme. And so I don't look upon it as lying, so to speak, as fulfilling what Yah wanted. And sometimes you have to go directly against those that are following Hasatan. You know, if you study the scriptures, all the evil on the world comes from three people. The first was Ham, and he gave us Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, and all of that. After Ham comes
Cush.
Huh?
Cush.
Well, no, not Cush. Abraham's first son, Ishmael,
Okay.
and his grandson Amalekite, and down that line. And the third is Esau. And believe it or not, if you trace all the wars, all the evil, all the 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 royalty that causes things, the what do you call it? Well, all the lawyers, all the bankers, all the crap like this, it all stems from Babylon and then the descendants of these three men. It really does. I mean, I did a really deep dive with a Jewish friend of mine that wanted to stop as we were reading Genesis and research the genealogy and everything. And these three men and their descendants, believe it or not, is the cause of all war, all evil, all the corruption in the world today. And God said in cases, destroy all of the people. And they didn't. And because they didn't, the ones that survived has created what we have today. And what Destin was saying is basically correct, because we do not follow the genealogies. We do not follow what God has said for us to pay attention and to watch. And by not doing so, we have let these people get above us and in control of all the things that control our lives. Think of the curse of Canaan. You shall always be a servant. Well, if you want to control something, like the Rothschild said, is I don't want to be king. I want to control the king. And whoever controls the money controls the king. And therefore, the bankers control the money and they control the world. The lawyers assist the bankers. They are not the owners, but they are servants. But they are servants that rule. And then you have the royal lines that rule, but they are ruled by rulers like the World Economic Forum, etc. So I'll rest on that. But we need to understand that everything we see manifest in the world today starts right here in what we are reading in Genesis. I mean, everything here is the genesis of all the good, which is the family that we are studying, and all the evil, which is also the family we are studying. And which ones chose which side? And here we had two nations, and one is by the sword. Okay, look at today. What's the one nation on earth that rules by the sword, no matter what country they are in? And they've been kicked out of every country they've been in except the one they're now ruling in Gaza, and that's the Palestinians. Every country they go in, they foment war, they foment terrorism. They've been kicked out of every Arab country there is, and the Egyptians won't have them, the Saudis won't have them, none of them will have the Palestinians, but yet Hamas and Hezbollah, and yet here they are today. Anyway, I'll get off this soapbox, but
Thanks, you.
Rebecca, she was doing the Lord's work from Revelation.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Thanks, you, Annie. Let's go over to you, Xander.
I just wanted to make a few point outs. Earlier someone said that it was to honor and obey your parents, but isn't the commandment to respect your parents? So, I mean, we wouldn't listen. You could respect your parent and not obey them, right? Like
Right.
if they want you to do something that's wrong.
Very
Yeah.
true.
And the other thing is the whole Rebecca said, "Well, I'll take the curse on for you." Isn't that been like a hot topic lately that we've been discussing, that no one could take like something for you? Whatever you deserve is what you're going to get. So just because she said that to him doesn't mean it was true, and that he should take that word as bond, and that would go away from him, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Great. Two really great points. So yeah, it says, what does the commandment say? It's the is it the fifth? It's the fifth commandment about honor and respect your parents. But when the word, if they're asking you to do something that's against Torah, that means that you're in a conundrum, right? To either, if you know the Torah says this and your parents are asking you to do this, what do you choose? And I think we can agree we would obey the Torah. We worry more about the consequence of what God says, but at the same time, you can still respect your parents. So Xander, you're making the point of like, we're not to obey, we're to respect and honor our parents, as opposed to like obeying everything. Because then again, what if our parents lead us astray, right? How many of us have been led astray by teachings our parents have given us, their parents have given them? So yeah, that's the first point, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I don't want to deceive anyone. So you're right. Good point out there. Second point you made was was really interesting because she said, let the curse come on to me. I don't, so is that equal with forgiveness of sin, right? Because it's a hot topic we've been talking about. Can someone die for the sins of another? Can the curses, it's kind of, it's interesting because we don't read a Torah commandment. We read a Torah commandment about the father and the daughter, where the vows of the daughter can be put on the father if she's under his household. If she is saying something that goes against, like, you're saying that you're making this vow, daughter, you don't know what you're saying. I'm going to correct you. And if the father doesn't correct her, that comes on to him. There's some, I can't get it word for word. We'd have to look at and read it. But that is a really interesting point out, Xander, because she's essentially trying to say the curse of what you're about to do. So is that, first of all, an admission what you're doing is wrong? So the curse of what you're about to do, I'm going to take the curse of that. She was willing to take the curse of that. Huh. That, never thought about it from, I have to give that some thought. Does anybody else have from the group have a comment on that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you, Annie, go.
In scripture, it says that if you lead somebody astray and they follow you, you get their curse. That means you have to pay the same price they do, and worse for directing them if you're the leader.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, let's take it here. She's not offering to pay for his sin. No one can do that, and that's what's been the hot topic.
Yeah.
But what she is saying is, okay, I'm leading you into this. And if you're wrong, I have to bear the curse. And that is correct doctrinally. But here's the thing. Again, we don't know all the conversation. And she was told by Yah himself, the older will serve the younger. And they could see the favoritism for Esau from the father, and they have both known the teachings of Abraham. And the one thing Abraham stressed is the relationship with God overall. He's more important than anything we do. And so we have to follow that. And if she's saying, okay, your father we know is favorite is his favorite is Esau, and he's got a blind spot when it comes to Esau. But we have to, the Lord told me you're going to serve the Lord, and your brother is going to serve you, even though he's the older. And so do this, and I will take all responsibility for instructing you. Now, that is plausible and doctrinally correct. And the thing is, we've got the scripture, but it's not giving us everything that was said, everything that was done. And so that's how I would see it, because we also have the testimony later on that all Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are sitting with the Lord in heaven. So they can't have done something that was, especially Jacob crossing Esau. Not, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Plus, it shows you, Annie, how confident she was.
Yes.
She was very confident that this was the way to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I don't look at on her as taking his sin, because no one can do that. That's abundantly clear. But she was saying, well, I'm your parent. If you respect me, you can weigh the both of us, which one of us is honoring the father as we have been taught by your grandfather Abraham. uh I'm taking this responsibility, and if you follow me, I mean, it's, we're going to do this and bear this, and I'll bear the wrong before God. And that makes sense. Knowing how families and mothers and everything work, that's how it would come down in my mind. Anyway, I rest.
Yeah, I think you Annie's onto it, and the fact that Jacob understood this when he sold, like he's told his brother, well, here, I'll offer you this bowl of soup for your birthright. He already knew, like he already had that desire, because this desire for the inheritance was already there within him, I think.
Hey, great.
Yeah, I agree. That knowledge was there between him and his mother, and that's one of the reasons he proposed that. Yeah, I follow that. I track with that.
Xander.
I yeah, I do agree. Like, someone who, um, right. So if you teach someone wrong, it's on you. But if you knowing that it's wrong when the teacher's teaching you wrong, isn't that the whole ears being tickled thing? Like, you someone says it, so you go along with them. I don't know.
Oh,
Like,
that's possible. I agree,
oh,
but this is something she's told him, and he knew that. And it's then you have the personal relationship with God. And if God had confirmed what his mother had taught him, and then he saw the injustice that was given his older brother when his older brother really despised keeping the family tradition of serving God, I but we weren't there. But that it tracks that it would be right, and you would be right if he saw it was wrong. But what if he didn't see it was wrong and God confirmed his mother's words to him?
I wonder if we get hung up on this word lie. Like,
Yeah.
again, the command is not to bear false witness, which is not the same as lying. Bearing false witness, you could bear, by bearing false witness, yeah, I saw that guy murder somebody, but you didn't. So that guy could be put to death for a lie is a very different thing. I think they believed it. Rebecca and Jacob believed it so much, but they were maybe a little bit worried that God wasn't going to follow through or something. I don't know. Their lack of faith, and that's why they resorted to this scheme. But I think they desired it. It's a spiritual thing. This, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's much deeper. And maybe it was like Sarah, convincing Abraham, well, you need to take another wife. Maybe it's the
Yeah.
same like,
oh,
Yeah.
so what about the whole? Well, so he purposely lied and said he was someone else and stole something. So that's breaking a different commandment.
Great. Great
which
point.
which again could be this whole idea of kol vamer, light and heavy. Is it is it better to lie and steal to for the greater good, even though ultimately maybe it was the wrong thing, but for the greater good, they really believed that what they were doing was absolutely the right thing to do.
Kind of like stealing bread so I don't die kind of thing. If I steal
Correct.
bread because
Yeah.
I'm hungry, but I'm gonna
Hmm.
die if I don't eat.
Yeah.
So, but I don't
Well,
know. Like it's just we can't judge this story as cut and dry because there's a lot of elements. Like Xander raises some good points. Like we are teaching our kids to not lie, to not steal. But again, I hear Laura, I hear you. It's like murder and killing, not the same thing. Lying and bearing false witness, not the same thing. I hear you. So this is it, it's a really, really good discussion.
Well, this gets into a Hebrew argument. Is it a lie to a liar? So the point is, uh, God wanted something to happen, and what God wanted to happen happened. But in doing that, um, Jacob did bear false witness to his father. That Jacob did, as you pointed out multiple times, bore false witness to his father. But then, without that happening, what would have motivated him to go to Laban and get the four wives that God wanted him to have so he could make the 12 tribes of Israel? And everything that God wanted to accomplish was accomplished. He fought with the Savior himself, and the Savior blessed him. Had he lied and broken, that could have never have happened. So we have to understand we don't have full understanding on this. We just know we're going with what we were told, the letter of the law. And here it's the spirit of the law and the letter of law in direct opposition. So where do we go? Well, with me, as the prophet said, me and my house, I'll follow the Lord. And since the Lord approved of this, I'm going to have to say, yeah, I see he bore false witness, but there's more to this I don't understand, so I'm going to put it on the shelf till I see the fullness of truth from Yah.
Yeah. I have let's go over to Destin for a final comment. I actually have one more comment I want to make, because just because maybe that was the plan of Jehovah, that's not without some other consequence. And I want to bring up one more point on that, because we do have to keep reading to see what happens. So go ahead, Destin, and then we'll keep going.
Well, absolutely. We got to keep reading, but we also forget, and we can easily go back and interject what's not there and ask all these questions. But all of this I see was an answer to prayer. We are giving, we are looking back. Well, given this timeline, what was the timeline of what we just read, right? What was it? Nicole was saying 40 years. Jacob and Esau were 40 years old when this happened. So from the time that they were born, what if God took 40 years to answer Rebecca's prayer? I believe, just like we talk about in men and women, different characteristics, there is definitely, unmistakably, something that Rebecca, Jacob and Esau's mom, seen. She was sensitive to the Holy Spirit. She was close to God. She was blessed to have this multitude of nations. There is something big into the spirit of what she's seen, and I believe the reasoning why she decided to go forth. She's seen, even though I believe she didn't understand it at the time, but this situation presented itself, and it was an answer to prayer, and it was an aha moment going, this is what I prayed to God about. This is what he warned me would happen, that I've been wondering for 40 years. Genesis 25, 23, 22. And the children struggled within her, wrestled within her. And she said, if this is so, why is this happening? Why am I thus this way? Why am I troubled in spirit? She went to the Lord. And when she went to the Lord this question over this exact issue, this is what he said. And the Lord said to her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separate from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger, and the elder shall serve the younger. This was her aha moment, her answer to prayer from the very beginning. I see it as women have this extra sensitivity concerning their children. They're more spiritually in tune with their children, as Chrissy projected. They have um, they're a spiritual shield to the man to see things in the spiritual realm, both good and bad, to be able to warn the man of the spiritual things that the man cannot see coming. I believe Jacob honored his mother, because he was led by the Spirit. She was led by the Spirit to go, aha, this is it. This is how God is choosing to fulfill that the older is going to serve the younger for generations to come after this. And I believe that that's what happened there. It was a aha moment. She was sensitive to the Spirit, and it was a prayer that she prayed from the very beginning that God took 40 years to
Okay, so lots of good discussion around this topic. We see the blessing, right? May God give you heaven's dew, earth's richness, abundant of grain, new wine. And then we read in verse 41 of chapter 27 that Esau held this grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And he says, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. And so you see this kind of thing. What I wanted to say also, when we have to keep reading all the way to Genesis 38, because we talk a little bit more about this portion in Genesis 38, because what ends up happening is that Jacob worked, no matter how we cut this, there was an element of deceit here. Jacob deceived Isaac. Now, why it's important, I think, to keep reading is because we read in Genesis 38 the story of Judah and Tamar. And what happens is that Jacob is deceived by a goat from Judah. What we read here in this portion is that 2 goats were killed and Isaac was deceived by Jacob. Now Jacob's going to be deceived by somebody. And Judah is deceived by Tamar. So, right, remember Jacob also marries, there's an element of deceit as well. Jacob marries the wrong sister. Who was Jacob deceived by? Laban. What goes around comes around, right? So we have to keep reading because there is, you can't get away with anything. And Xander, it just reminds me of a conversation you and I were having this week about, there's this man, Jordan Peterson, who I really respect. He has a clinical practice that counsels a lot of men. And he has a good 4-minute video that maybe I'll play now, and then we'll have a little bit more discussion and have a little bit of a break, where he talks about that he doesn't see anyone get away with anything. So usually I play this video I play it every year when we get to chapter 38, but I think we should play it now because we're talking about this. So let's play it. I will just make sure that my speed is normal. Here we go. And I'll share my screen and have a listen to what he says. I mean, this is just law of normalcy. This is even if you take the Bible out of it, and the Bible is the truth, nobody gets away with anything.
Why doesn't anyone ever get away with anything? That's one of your lines.
Well, I think, imagine you have a plastic ruler, and you pull it back in front of your face. And you let go. It's like, you think, well, this is going pretty well so far. Right. Snap. Yeah, well, it's because you can't bend the structure of reality. And this is, I think, also partly what in this message is frightening. Everything that you distort snaps back, and often magnified, and everyone knows that. And one of the things I discuss with my audience is like, well, just think about how you talk to people that you're trying to treat properly. You don't say to them, okay, here, kid, here's the way you deal with life. This is, you put your son on your knee and say, look, lie every chance you get. Falsify things. Don't take any responsibility for anything. If you can slough it off to someone else, if you can hide things where no one will find them, that's a hell of a good strategy. Like, no one believes that, ever. So we know that that doesn't work. Now, we're tempted because now and then you think, well, I can just cut a corner here, or I can get away with this and no one will find out. It's like, yeah, they will. They'll find out, or you'll find out. And I saw this in my clinical practice all the time. People would be suffering for some consequence, a lot, and we'd untangle it. Maybe we'd go back 5 years or 10 years, and it would be something that was left undone, or something that was done that shouldn't have been done. And sometimes not even on the part of the person, sometimes on the part of their parents, or maybe even on the part of their grandparents. Like, these things stick around for a very long period of time. But it's like, if you produce a rift in the structure of reality, it's not going to go away until you rectify it. And often it breeds more demons, that's for sure.
I think that people only don't believe that when they're being hubristic. And I think that most people know that deep in their hearts. You know, when you get high on your horse, that happens fairly often. If you have any sense, you think, geez, I better be careful and tap myself down a fair bit, because if I get too puffed up, man, something's going to come along and take me out at the knees. And everyone knows that. Pride comes before a fall. And that's why it says in the Old Testament that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. I have never, in all my years as a clinical psychologist, and this is something that really does terrify me, I have never seen anyone ever get away with anything at all, even once. You know, there's that old idea that God has a book, you know, and keeps track of everything in heaven. It's like, okay, you know, maybe it's not a book. Fine. But that is a really useful thing to think about, because, well, and maybe you disagree. Maybe you think people get away with things all the time. I tell you, I've never seen it. What I see instead is that thing happens, right? Someone twists the fabric of reality. And they do it successfully because it doesn't snap back at them that moment. And then like 2 years later, something unravels. And they get walloped and they think, oh my God, that's so unfair. And then we track it. It's like, but what happened before that? This. Well, and then what? This. And then what? This. And then what? Oh, this. Oh, that's where it went wrong. It's, yeah, because you can't twist the fabric of reality without having it snap back. It doesn't work that way, and why would it? Because what are you going to do? Twist the fabric of reality? I don't think so. I think it's bigger than you. You know, and I think that one of the things that really tempts people is the idea that, well, I can get away with it. It's like, yeah, you try. You see how well that works. It's like you get away with nothing. And that is the beginning of wisdom. And it's something that deeply terrifies me. And we walk on a very thin and narrow edge. And we're very lucky when things aren't degenerating into chaos around us or rapidly moving to far too much order. And it's not an easy thing to stay on that line. And you can tell when you're on that line, because the things are deeply meaningful and engaging when you're on that line. But if you're not existentially terrified about the consequences of wavering off that, then you are truly not awake. Stay awake, speak properly, be honest, or watch the hell out, because things will come your way that you just do not want to see at all. And it might not just be you, it might be everyone you know and everything about your culture that is demolished for generation after generation. It's like, stay awake and be careful.
Okay. I thought it was worth playing. I like some of the things that he has to say with lots of experience behind him. Thoughts? It's not cut and dry. It is cut and dry, but it's not cut and dry. There's an element of mystery there, I think. And then at the end, we have this sort of husband and wife conversation. A husband and a wife. And Rebecca says to Isaac, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from the Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living. What a bold statement to say to your husband about who your son marries. I'm weary of my life before the daughters of Heth. What is my life to me? Who's Heth? Heth is the son of Canaan and the grandson of Noah through Ham's line. So she's concerned about her genealogy. She's worried about the lineage of her sons and her lineage, ultimately, her and Isaac's lineage. Hittites are a people descended from Heth who lived near Hebron. And we know what happened. The portion ends in verse 9 with Esau taking a wife from the daughters of Canaan, the daughter of Ishmael, Malahal. Why? Why did he do this? Because it was evil in the eyes of his father, Isaac. That provides us some information. That provides us a lot of information. Esau was faking righteousness by marrying a descendant of Abraham through Ishmael's daughter. Interesting. And then, of course, I have some more lineage there. So, any thoughts on that? Comments before we go to our half-hour break? Do you need some time to think, and we'll come back for some discussion, or any comments somebody wants to make before our 30-minute break?
Yeah, I just have to make one comment of what you just said about where the Hittites are from Hebron. Last week we talked about the Cave of the Patriarchs. So the Cave of the Patriarchs today is in Hebron, and it's under Arab control, or like the town of Hebron is Arab. And we talked about how the Cave of the Patriarchs is divided between some Jewish portions, but mostly Arab. What I thought was like really surreal was that you can't, so like you can't just drive into Hebron as a non-Arab. You would not get through the gate, and if you snuck in, they would kill you. And to prove this, there is one road to the Cave of the Patriarchs, and it's called the Martyrs Road. That's the actual name of the street. And it's completely like security to the nines. Like if you picture like a downtown city, or like the main drag of a city, it's just, building after building after building, and they're all connected, and there's no breaks in between. Well, that's how this road is, but every single one of those shops is boarded up. Every window, every door, iron bars, never to be opened again, so that when you're on that street, you're safe. But there's this one break in the wall, basically, right before the Cave of the Patriarchs, where there's no big buildings, no walls or anything, and you just kind of open to the community of Hebron, or to the city of Hebron. And there's literal signage that, for you as a person on this road, it basically says you are entering a 200-meter section where you're unprotected and you must walk swiftly.
Oh my gosh.
So just as you said that, Denise, I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, that's why Rebecca was so troubled by these Hittite women. It's still true today.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and then on this 200-meter section, there's literal just like memorial stones everywhere about this person was murdered, this person was murdered, this person was murdered, right here. Like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow. Yeah. Don't think we grasp it. Here, V'yirekeka Yehovah v'yishmereka. Yahir Yehovah Paneveleka V'yuneka. Yisai Yehovah Paneveleka V'sem Laka Shalom. V'shamu et Shemi el Benai Israel. V'ani Ehirkim. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah make his face shine upon you. May Yehovah lift up his face on you and give you peace. So my name will be put on the sons of Israel, and I myself will bless them. Bat shalom, everybody. Okay.